Hey there, welcome to day 101. Hey there, welcome to day 105 of 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tomlin Nyback, and we're here discussing Black issues in America, maybe from a different perspective than um, is commonly held all over the world and the internet and this country, America. Oh, we're looking at history. Black individuals' present position in America, mostly economically, is the focus. And we're using historical proofs, institutions, uh, proofs of marginalizations and whatnot. Just want to give a shout out to maybe the Catholics and other members of the world mourning today as Notre Dame Cathedral is on fire. You're talking about a centuries old edifice. There's a couple around the world, but it's pretty sad to see spires falling and flames licking the innards of that great cathedral in France. So just want to give a shout out today about that. Okay, so now as we get through these issues, we move through these issues of Blackness in America, economics, politics, finances, financial literacy, how we came to be institutionalized, marginalized, what slavery meant then, what it means today, and all that. As we go through this process, two thoughts have emerged and are foremost, mostly in my thinking as we go along. Maybe we'll add more or adjust the definitions. But the first thought has two parts. First part is, does the Black slave mind still exist? Is it still being passed on from generation to generation by intuition, environmental factors, through education, whatever? And the same, on the other side of the same coin is, does the white mind of privilege, entitlement, expectation of privilege get passed on from generation to generation? Stick around, and you'll probably find what I believe about that. But I try not to spoon feed you my philosophy, my views. I want us to find thinking points on which to pivot our arguments and things like that. Now, the second thought is a burden for Black folks to have some financial literacy, to understand, I don't know, business structures, just really be deeply immersed in understanding how money works in America, what the dollar is and does. Is dollar weak or powerful? Yeah, it's interesting. I listen to a lot of financial speakers on my little MP3 player, and it's great. It just nourishes my head while I'm at work. I have a job that I can do that. I'm blue collar, not wealthy or rich by any means, as American standards go. But it's interesting to hear them list the countries around the world that have a differing view of money and finances as compared to America. And the list is all countries that we were at odds with, at war with, had issues with, and all that. On the news really presents the problem as nuclear threats and mights and armies and cyber threats and all that. But to me, it's more of an economical issue. You know, um, I want Blacks to understand that the dollar It's not the only currency or only means. It's not the only means of economic commerce in the world. Other countries use a lot of different strategies and whatnot, and America's system may be challenging to them. They may disagree with America's system. From what my little bit of research, I disagree with America's system of money. But we'll get maybe later down the road. We'll get into that when I can articulate those views better. I got into this year-long project by listening to a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. He talks about these things much more eloquently than I do, although he doesn't. His focus isn't so much economically. It comes out in his message, but he's has a more historical application. He's sourcing historical data to bring his argument, and go check him out. He's all over YouTube. He's not hard to find. I read 3 of his works. A Black History Reader. 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. I want you to get these books if you can. Maybe by the end of the year, I might have it together enough to get some of these out to some of the people on the private email list. But you got to get with me if you want to be on that list. Oh, Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice, and Powernomics, Dr. Anderson's national plan to empower Black America. Just so we're not humdrum all the time about slavery, racism, inequality, marginalization in America. We take a fictional look at marginalization, racism, slavery in America. Harriet Beecher Stowe's phenomenal work, Uncle Tom's Cabin, and it's very important that her work there informs theater, stereotypes between whites and blacks. A lot of good things come out of that book, so we're walking through that as the year progresses. I encourage you to get that book. We're going through a series right now, the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and it after we get done that series, we'll take a break and get more into that. Make sure we're not falling behind as far as schedule wise. We're coming up on a third of the way through this project, and there's some certain points, landmarks I do want to hit. Behind me, you'll see the hashtag #US2 symbol. Black women essentially gathering here, supporting one another, discoursing. You can find Black Enough, BLAGGENUF. Check them out. It's kind of a black Facebook. Find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com and the Heritage Institute in Washington, D.C. All right, I think that's it. Not a whole lot going on with these delegates and signers of the Declaration of Independence, which was signed at the Second Continental Congress. And the colonies, they got together. Maybe I should have probably done a little more historical backdrop on their frequency of gathering, and maybe a little bit of the political process that made them representatives there in Philly. But we just go on as best we can. I'm just looking for their relationship with slavery, where the slave owners, their religion and stuff like that. So that's just a brief overview. I'm referencing Wikipedia, so I'm not going to in-depth library. I'm not reading books this thick on biographical information at all. No. We're just taking a flyby and seeing where they are at in certain issues. I think the issues I'm looking at are key points, religion, relationship with God, slavery or not. And we find that there's a cross-section there economically, politically. Some are thinkers, some are merchants, plantation owners. You can guess they were all guessing we're not through yet, but they were all wealthy to a degree, and business owners, which is the crux of some of the argument. We got so many people, black, white, brown, red, all languages, catering and appearing as blue-collar agents, successful blue-collar agents. When that is not happening, I'm reading and researching some material by a man named Dr. I'm not Doctor, it could be, but his name is Robert Kiyosaki from Hawaii, and look up cash flow and all that stuff. He's rich and all that. A lot of people listen to him. But it's all about the mind and the thinking and the intellect. He's got this model of this 4 quadrants and all that. I'm not going to get into his work specifically, but it's all about the thinking. And I'm finally untangling the success I see in the world and who is the real deal and who is not. And this goes, it's from churches to religion. It's about business models. It's about entities that we can create, anyone can create. And the entity, just like you're a slave, but you build this business model, and you build it, from within, and there's teams and stuff like that. But the point is, I would look at successful people, and I want to bet that a high percentage of them, their foundation is in a kind of business model, a business foundation, and it's got to be for protection purposes, tax purposes, sustainability purposes. And the rich don't tell you that. That's I bought some of Mr. Kiyosaki's books and stuff like that, and he's so he's awesome the way it comes across. So we're later in the year we're going to get into some of his stuff. There's some personal things I need to position in my life before I go preaching about his stuff. I can talk about Dr. Anderson's stuff because I'm black and I've experienced what he's talking about. Financially, right now my mind is being shifted 180 degrees, and it's going to be still a few more months till I can show you some a legitimate, tangible progress. No symbols and head knowledge. I'm through with that. I spent many decades there. I can talk to you forever about stuff and never show you tangible evidence. And that's another part of that conditioning piece that I'm feeling about black folks is we're so good at the rhetoric, in Plato's day, and Socrates and all that. You had the sophists and the rhetoricians, just guys that knew how to argue. These are the guys you take to court for litigation, because in court it's not necessarily being right, it's having the right argument. Sad, but yeah. You could be right as rain, but if your opponent has a better argument, you're in trouble. All right, so black folks need we need to be tangible agents. I want to talk to you about racism, marginalization and stuff, and coming out of that and all that. And I need to be able to show you something, through my experience at least, to begin with. All right. All right. So we kind of buzzed our way halfway through. Let me take just a little break here. Two guys, and we're going alphabetically, interesting. And this, we're in some of the L's. Two gentlemen from New York, nothing spectacular, not a Franklin or a Jefferson or a Hancock, so the big names, bang, you know, um, John Quincy Adams, so of Amistad fame and all that. But you got your, a relatively common guys here, and so Francis Lewis, first guy, he was an old guy. I did the calculation. He was born 1713, died 1802, 89 years old. Back when you just don't live that long. That's more than, almost more than double average longevity back in those days. What is his secret? In Western culture, you might not be surprised if you go to the Himalayas or China or something like that. Yeah, or Japan, right? This guy, white man and colonialism, 89, almost 90 years old. Represented New York, from Wales, actually. He's the other guy. There's another gentleman we talked about earlier from England, where I forget which website I went to. Don't worry about that, but their names aren't associated with a specific colony, but they're associated with a European space. So here's Wales. We talked to a guy from England before, and so I don't know what the website I was at, why they would speak more towards their birth, where they were born, than where they represented. Interesting. So that's just a side note. Being in New York, each guy as well encountered the British in different ways and different points. We're talking from the northern, Connecticut, Massachusetts area, on down to Georgia. There were different run-ins with the British in New York. This gentleman, his home was destroyed. His wife was arrested at some point. Her captivity led to her death. The British did not treat her well, didn't give her clothing, didn't feed her well, and things like that. So when she was finally released, her health was in shambles, and she died soon after the release. Sorry, I don't have the dates here. It might be in the brief notes. His son fought in the Revolutionary War. You find a lot of these guys very close to military action, or their fathers. Europeans are always, you have a strong defense or offense. You just, someone always wants something from you, or trying to coerce something. So a lot of these men are associated with the military to some degree. I've got my little history with the military, family members before and after me involved with the military. It's not a surprise. No religion, no slavery mentioned in his life. He was a merchant. I can't. We just say he signed because he was just a representative. The men who are educated probably just traveled in those educational circles. The people that studied in England and came back. You know, their resume were similar. They had talking points, been to the same places, probably drank the same alcohols that they can talk about. So the, you know, the good old boys, that kind of fraternity goes way way back. That brotherhood thing. So he rose up in politics, you know, word of mouth probably, and then he's representing his constituents, and so he just rises up through the ranks. So he signed. We just say he signed as a reflection of the policies of the colony of New York. You know, people. This thing with severing ties from England, it was just a growing concern and polarization, and each side wanted something like the world would be so much different if Britain had listened to our needs and concerns. You know, we might still be under British rule and hailing the Queen and King and stuff like that. You know, but they felt they had the power, but we felt we had the power, separated by an ocean and all that. Our numbers had grown significantly here in the Western Hemisphere. So, um, you know, I'm the same way. You know, don't be telling me how to do stuff in my space. You know, I've been in this particular space over a year now, and you know, I don't own it, but I don't want the owners encroaching in here all too much. This is the way I like it, you know. Same way for these people here in the colonies. Next guy is New York, Albany. Albany's a little further north. Well, I don't know where Francis Lewis in New York was located, but Albany's north. I believe it's on the Canadian border. He was born 1716, died 1778, 2 years after signing. He merchant as well. He was another guy that made a fortune from war. Was King George's War that lasted 4 years, 1744 to 1748. And war, you know, making munitions and weapons, big business in the world. There are so many businesses in the world, and they're all interrelated and tangled up together, you know. So war, this thing, um, we have something called proxy war, where two nations will just outfit ignorant people and watch the ignorant people fight. You find a lot of that in Africa. Very sad. Somalia, big example of that. Just dumping arms in there, and they have no sense of a filter or control on their aggressions, and they got weapons, and you can imagine like the smartest and wisest being killed off, and these aggressors and ignorant people being left in that space, perpetuating a certain mindset in that country. So it's very sad what's going on there, but in the world. And so, you know, King George's War, Revolutionary War, the Civil War. There's always some war, you know. Every generation will remember its war, you know. And this has seemingly been since the beginning of time. Um, so Philip Livingston is like, hey, you know, I provide a product or service that the war needs, you know, and the war pays. You know, it's not like a blank check that doesn't get paid or something like that. You know, it's profitable because you know, the people involved in these wars, they want their stuff when they want it, and they're going to pay top dollar to make sure it's there on time so they can war. And so Philip Livingston was one of the guys. We have a couple guys that have profited from wars. Okay, it is what it is. He was slow to patriotism, it says in Wikipedia, and we have a couple guys now. Now that we got a couple guys, we can start to see some of the demographics of the group. And he was initially a loyalist, and you know, shuffled his feet towards patriotism and whatnot. But he came around and didn't seem to get much pushback as some of the men we've encountered who were slow to let go of the crown and come on over to the Patriots' side. He's another guy, no religion or slavery mentioned in his biography or resume. You know, both these guys were, and he signed much for the same reasons that Francis Lewis signed. He represented New York. New York was just wanted their autonomy and their freedom from England. And since New York was a northern colony, it did not, you know, slavery was frowned upon, and just the North was quicker. I mean, everybody was slavery. All the colonies and states were slave colonies and states initially. Just the North broke away. Maybe their industrialization, they had a different focus up in the North, whereas in the South, maybe it was just more conducive to have the larger plantations and things going on, longer seasons, humidity, you know, to facilitate all that agricultural activity. You know, it goes on in the North, but more so there in the South. And the black skin is going to resist the sun better than anybody else's skin on the planet. You know there are melanin conventions and stuff. You got white people out here trying to scientifically figure stuff out to get, you know, be black. You know, they already know sitting out in the sun that, you know, you might look nice and golden and tan, but you're risking skin cancer and leathery skin later on in life. You know, so you know that's these two guys from New York. No big fireworks bursting on their biographies and whatnot, but still, you know, they were necessary. New York is a pretty important space up there up north, and these guys were sent. You know, the population around them felt they were the most able-bodied, able-minded people to go and represent them at the Articles of Confederation, First Continental Congress, Second Continental Congress. You know, it's amazing. I went to sleep when these things were taught to me in school, but I'm seeing their relevance today. Hey, thanks for sticking around with me. We come through thick and thin together. We come this far. Let's keep on going on together. I'm Tomlin's Nyback, and that's day 105 out of the way in 365 days towards racial change. We'll see you next time.